Good evening or good morning to you, beautiful friends, whatever time of day it should happen to be, wherever you're at. I thank you for joining me. I am one of these days, I will post a video when it's not nighttime, when I'm not getting closer to unwinding and getting toward bed, and there will be light. I think I shared a short at one point. It's actually just more that I will oftentimes be coming out of meditations and just reflecting on different aspects of the day, and typically we'll just kind of want to share at that point. Life has been lifing, and as previously discussed, no naivety. I'm not blind. There's a lot. Apocalypse Now, World War III, who knows? But all that we can do is continue to show up how we're going to show up and be responsible for what energies and tones we are setting. Are we wanting to support a fear narrative? Are we wanting to exist as a space of support? And it can be kind of tricky, and we'll come back. But I do want to kind of step sideways for an anecdote. I love bread. I've never met a bread that I haven't loved. I'm part Italian, though I know, again, poor line, you couldn't necessarily see it because I'm very Asiatic. I am a multitude of races, but amongst them, Italian is part of it. And I swear to you, I've yet to meet a carbohydrate that I don't love. So I was going to procure a fancy bread that I like, cheddar and jalapeno bread. If you really want to know, you might be like, I don't care. But I happened to, so it's a funny story. I didn't know it, but I happened to know the people that own the company. I had known them socially, so it was kind of neat when I first, kind of fell in love with this bread to at one point run into, it's a husband and wife. So I oftentimes run into the husband, and I saw him, and I was just like, oh yeah, what's new? And he's like, well, these tense times. And it's one of those where, again, just me being me. It stinks sometimes because I'm just like, I mean, I'm not going to make it that way. It's like, I get what you're saying. I was like, people, and I forget the verbiage he used, and I maybe perhaps should have taken some notes or something, especially to use that as an anecdote now. But I forget what he did. It was kind of a negative connotation, and it might be me and my own place where I'm at, because again, projection. But I can't help but observe that a lot of times people just want to be negative. They just seem to find things to complain about. I'll go slightly sideways from this anecdote to a colleague of mine in my professional life who was telling me about a blanket that she made. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And she's like, yeah, I'm fundraising for a friend who's in some hard times. I'm sorry, that's horrible to hear. And then she unpacks more, and then unpacking more. And it's just kind of like, okay, I want to hold space for you. Well, what's going on here exactly? Maybe I'm gonna stop. Why don't you just let it all out? Just all of it. Shh. Intensive care bears share. Let all the icky out. And it's interesting because, we introduce these things like empathy. Is it empathetic to continue to, oh my gosh, that's horrible. So horrible. I'd feel horrible, etc. It's where sometimes I've been perceived as maybe being insensitive because I want to potentially refocus. And it's unfortunate because I do try to share with people. I've experienced a lot of trauma, and we all have, as I've stated in the past. I absolutely believe, and I've unpacked it with Google Gemini. In fact, if there's anything of curiosity where you're just like, you sound nuts, I have transcripts of some of the conversations I've unpacked with Gemini. I include an email address, so if you want just some of the cited sources, just you can see the way that some of the dialogue has gone, so you can get to that. By all means, please don't hesitate, because I realize I do have this ability to kind of see bigger picture and intertie that into the current. But in that, I don't necessarily mean to be unempathetic, but now going back even a bit further to the gentleman, my friend who owns his business, and he's just like, yeah, you see what's going on. And I'm like, I do see what's going on, and life is fantastic. And I need to be clear, okay? I have my own struggles. I'm I'm at a place of reframing. I have recently disconnected from more than a few connections. I'm at a place of healing just from the ways that I've observed a lack of support, a lack of care, and no judgments. People are people having their own experiences, but from the realization that perhaps I unhealthily have maybe been enabling, and in my Captain Save a Ho, garden home, so to speak, energy. Because again, I have, and it's my own ego and my own narcissism wanting to show up as that which I have not had in this world. And as much as it is such an act of love, there is also a bit of ego in that, because who the heck am I to save anybody? I can just try to kind of hold space, etc., honor myself. And again, the tricky dynamics of polarities in humans, because in that instance, in, talking to my friend, it was just like, yeah, I see these times, and what can I do? And it was great because I used to get kind of Pollyanna with it, if you're familiar, without meaning to, where, I'd be like, it's where I would take a moment to breathe and maybe focus on gratitude. Did you know that if you smile for 30 seconds and hold a smile and focus on something you're happy for, the physiological effects, dopamine, serotonin will flood? All true, by the way, Google it. I might have tried to take it upon myself, like, he seems like he's not okay. Let me reframe this energy, as opposed to now just being like, yeah, these times. And I tell you what, I'm committed to just continuing to be the best me that I can be. And so it was great, in multiple facets. I think today's video may be mirrors. And the reason for this, so I've talked a little bit about celebrity. Heck, I think in my community, I even shared a post with one of my Gemini chats about the inherent underlying narcissism and wanting to make it by celebrity standards. And I'd commented on a YouTube reel, and it was Chad Smith, I believe is his name, the drummer from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he's watching Street Drummer. And what they should know about me, I love percussion. I have a soft spot. Well, I had a soft spot in my heart for drummers. I've been cured of that affliction, but I do. As far as I'm concerned, drummers are the most important element in a band, because they could absolutely wreak havoc. Just the ways that they can change their time signatures. And don't get me wrong, every instrument can, but the drummer, super power position. So Chad Smith was kind of watching a street drummer, and people were just ripping him like, what a tool, blah, 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 way to not help him. And I just made a comment. I said, to be fair, we don't know what happened off screen. Something could have come in this, he could have gotten exposure, etc. And the commentary that I got back, look at you, part of the problem, you can't pay your bills with money. And it was, funnily enough, like 3 years ago, this might have triggered me. I might have just been like, screw you! Do you not understand how much society just gives me so much crap because I think celebrity is disgusting? But to be able to be perceived as the complete opposite, it was actually fantastic. I mean, first and foremost, to not necessarily feel the need to defend, because again, I want to hold space. Like, bro, I'm some person on the internet, like, there's so much. What does it even matter to engage with you? Because you're clearly emotionally triggered, and you are having an emotional response because of whatever you seem to think that my response is representing based off your interpretation. Agency! That's what this one's going to be called. And we'll come back to that. But just essentially, again, the way that we perceive things. But it was neat because if you see my other videos, I mean, my short, all of it, I have such an aversion. And yet to be perceived as apparently just kind of advocating in that way and not necessarily caring about the person and how celebrities could do more, it just helped to substantiate that there is no right way to speak. Someone is always going to project whatever based off their interpretation. And going back to agency, I talk about Google Gemini and the conversations we have, because truly sometimes the way that I see things, and it's not that I'm ever trying to affront anybody, but I just see things so differently that it's nice to have a dialogue with the AI because it's able to step past the emotional responses. Meaning, if I say something perverse or triggering, even there have been times to where I've made an argument and it will say that my language is inflammatory, and I'll say, okay, but why? Aren't you inherently implying tone, etc., and the way that you've interpreted? And we'll unpack it further. And that ability to not necessarily get triggered or feel attacked by me sharing my further reaction to its reaction, if that makes sense. Literally, just the ability to have a back and forth in a dialogue. It is just so nurturing to my soul as someone who doesn't necessarily, I don't mean to, but gosh, do I trigger people. And I speak to every dynamic. I don't even mean romantically. I mean my friends. God love my friends. I see things differently. And so it's neat to just even unpack those things, because one of the talks was agency. And Gemini and I confirmed that, unfortunately, our first step in surrendering our agency is actually in assuming we know what people mean. And I'll give you a great example. Oh my gosh, I am like one of the worst offenders. So let's say that you were to just be talking to me and you were to be like, hey, yo, man, today at work, it's been a day, and, my lower back hurts, and, I'm in a funk. I hope you're having a good day. Literally, just from that, depending on the connection of our relationship, I might just pop in and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's been such a rough day. I know when I'm having a rough day, I might listen to music. Your back hurts. Are you going to do stretches? Yada, yada. Just that fix it feelings. Or just assuming I even know what they're intending. And that's actually my first step in giving away my agency. Because how can I actually be sure if I don't question? And it's kind of a tough one, right? Because it feels like you're maybe weak or ignorant. Like, well, I get it. It's like admitting that I'm an idiot. But is it? Because it's a way that I can handle it. In this example, for example, oh my gosh, look at that. In this instance, in this example, a good way to look at that would be like, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that when I'm dealing with aches and pains and just tough days, it can be really tough. I appreciate you sharing. Was there any reason in particular you just kind of wanted to connect, let me know? Like, were you looking for suggestions? Were you wanting something to be of service, etc.? And I have to wonder, I think all of us, we do that without even meaning to. And it's interesting because we minimize our assurity in assuming that we know, without perhaps just taking a step back to definitively know. Because even in that step of seeking clarification, but getting a firmer view and observation, then it doesn't necessarily harm us in any way. It's definitely not, to our detriment, even slightly. And then we actually unpacked a really neat point, and this is something that I tell you, I think I'm going to advocate until the ends of time. Spectrum thinking. Everything needs to be a spectrum, i.e., good, bad, right, wrong. We need to stop thinking in such absolutes, i.e., this means something to me, so it's bad. We need to go further. It's called anthropomorphification. Essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, we are not able to remove our human biases. We're not able to say, well, this hurt me, so it's hurtful. And we need to give language. And that's where the spectrum helps. Specifically, it kind of came into play because we were talking about, Gemini and I, to be clear, we were talking about the scales of psychopathy. And essentially, and I don't know if it's just my own personal circles and seeing things so differently as I've shared, but because I can be so socially deviant, but also not actually like deviant, like I'm not an anarchist. I'm not trying, as much as I talk about dismantling the systems or whatever, and as much as I think that they need ratification, etc. I'm not about destruction, if that makes sense. There could be such a negative connotation, and it's one of the things that Gemini and I had unpacked. But just even us as a societal standpoint, in the ways that, technically speaking, we can't agree on anything. the major humanities, as in psychology, philosophy, and biology, all agree that the human experience, while co creative, is still individualized. As in, even this, what you're taking from this, it's first and foremost, unfortunately, it's not what I'm meaning because I can't even convey, I can't clearly communicate to you what I'm trying to communicate anyway. Because what I am trying to communicate is based off of what I see, hear, feel, think, conceptualize. It runs through that processor, but then to have to filter that information and then put that information out, there are already so many different pieces. And so, because we're all so different, even though we can exist in this moment and we can have a shared reality and it's a co creation, there's still no one universal truth. Especially because it can't be the same thing. Gosh, I'm trying to think of something that I could grab that would be easily identifiable. So you can't necessarily see this, but lotion bottle. Again, we talked about it with the Campbell soup, etc. What is that to you, to me? So I think, not that I think, I've observed, and Gemini did confirm, it would be beneficial to us as people to help us potentially emotionally regulate, etc. So, on that note, this is not a long one. I wanted to puff on. I've been just learning and growing. I've been incredibly busy. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to sit with more of these thoughts, but just a little bit. Just a few little kernels and nuggets of information because as ever come to teach and come to be taught. And yeah, smoke, mirrors, agency. It's just such a beautiful world. And I thank you guys for being here now in this moment and being just continued to carrying on. There is so much potential and room to grow. And yeah, I appreciate you. I am loving you this day and always. And how are we going to change the world? Mwah!